Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Southern U Podcast, where we try to do our best to educate Southern landowners on all things habitat, wildlife, timber, and all things land-related, I guess. Joined to my right, your left, would be Mr. Jeremy Ferguson of Tut Land Company / Wildlife Consulting Services. And to my left, y'all know him as the A.L. Deer Legend, Matt, the A.L. Deer Legend Brock of Habitat First Properties.
Yeah.
The one and only.
One and only. He's here. He's going to make sure.
Getting some burping fuel here.
Yeah, I know. It's what he needs. He needs plenty of that.
I got to stay I got to stay hydrated after yesterday.
Yeah, Matt had a close call yesterday on the old bush hog doing land manager stuff.
Yeah. Got too hot.
I start saying, let's
hot.
make sure we explain close call with bush hog, because that could be many things.
I got too hot actually installing a shooting house.
Oh, so it wasn't the riding on the tractor part.
No. I made it back to the truck on the tractor, thankfully. But
that's good.
It was a testy situation.
Well, you're in the South this time of year. It's easy to get dehydrated. You're doing anything outside. So.
Oh, I drank nine bottles of water. I wasn't dehydrated.
Taylor.
I just overheated. Stop.
You're just a sissy. That's all there is to it.
I'm not.
I was trying to take up for you, man.
My fat self can work out there, heavy breathing and all.
Gotcha. Well, sorry, Matt. I tried to take up for you, man.
It's okay.
Well, hey guys, this episode I'm pretty excited about it because this time of year, as we're doing a few things, you're trying to hopefully you've got some spring / summer plots in the ground already.
They're dead.
Yeah, they might be dead if you live where we live because it's been so hot and so dry lately. I say that, but it has rumbled and thundered and all kinds of stuff here just outside where we're recording.
It poured between my house and your house.
Oh, really?
No rain here, no rain in my house.
Well, that's about how it goes, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, but with that stuff comes other management practices too. I know people are still burning, and which I guess I don't know about right now. There may be a burn ban in effect. I don't even know.
We're under a moderate drought, but not in a burn ban yet. But if things continue, we will likely enter that stage.
Yep. And that makes both of these guys, their lives exponentially more difficult.
It pushes our site prep burns back. Mm-hmm. Last year, we were still doing site prep burns in February, which is
insane.
You can say it's not ideal. It's not. That's actually a disaster. trying to run up that tide against your planters.
Yeah, we pushed 3 to 4 months worth of burning in 3 weeks. Oof. I mean, I was burning tracks and had planters on them 2 or 3 days afterwards.
Mm-hmm. Really?
Mm-hmm. Still smoking.
Mm-hmm. yeah. Go stomp the fire out before you start.
Yep.
Oh, that's crazy. But but today, we've got all different elements moving this time of year. But we're actually going to talk today about predator management / predator control. That's something that if you own land, lease land, and you're trying to manage that, certainly for wildlife, that's got to be part of your management strategy at some point. Mm-hmm. So we got 2 guys that know a thing or two about that, and I'm just going to hit them with some questions that, by the way, I know some of you guys may or may not know. If you're watching the podcast or listening to it for the first time, both of these guys here are biologists, and they are both have their own independent companies, consulting firms where they do habitat consulting and wildlife consulting for landowners here in the Southeast. So it's
independent yet merged.
Independent yet merged. That's right. They do work together a lot, but I'm just saying that we got 2. We got Habitat First, and we got Wildlife Consulting Services.
It has worked out well.
Yeah.
Ours, when I came out and started doing this, started out much like Matt doing the same things, and somewhere along the lines we took an exit off that interstate and got more into dirt work development type side of it, and
there's definitely more money to be made doing that.
Yeah, I mean, we got further away from the management, which is what I really, really enjoy, and more into the building. But that's kind of where Matt and I really talked, and we felt like we could kind of hit both sides, with each other's help. And it's been a good relationship.
Yeah, cool. And both former state employees too, right? And
yeah.
Do we talk about our past lives?
Hey, all steps to get where we are.
That's right.
Yep.
But all that to say, these are not just two random people that we just kind of pulled off the street. These are guys that have experience doing this stuff and on a larger scale than probably most people do. So I'm going to hit them with some predator management questions and see what we can find out and some practices, different tips and tricks we can learn to control predators on our property to make sure that things like deer and turkey are and even quail, all that kind of good stuff can be all that we want them to be. Anything that you guys want to add before we jump in, or?
No, I don't think so.
I will say this because we did mention that earlier. If you're out there, I know we get most of the time it's on Instagram, but we get messages about, hey, I'm in wherever in the southeast and I have X number of acres and I would really like to improve that. I want to make sure that I'm maximizing that and helping my deer and turkey and quail, all that kind of stuff, be all that they can be. Do you have anybody you'd recommend? Yes. So
Have truck, will travel.
yes. So we actually have done some consults for you guys, several people here in Alabama. And so we're looking to kind of expand on some of that too. And we've got some things in the works that we're pretty excited about as well. But just wanted to say that if that's something that you need, we don't really promote that a whole lot through the podcast. That's not why we started this podcast. But just want you to know that is available if that's something that you need. Maybe you're a longtime listener and didn't know that that's something that these guys do, but it is. So if you need something like that, just let us know. You feel free to shoot us an email, info@thesouthernu.com, or you can reach out to any of us on social media as well. So just want to say that little shameless plug before we jump in to the first question here. Y'all ready? Mm-hmm. Question number 1, what animals are the most concerning when it comes to predation? All right, what I mean by that is I think when people think predator control, they immediately think of one of two things: coyote, bobcat. All right.
Generally speaking.
All right. Yeah. Now, what I would like for you guys to maybe talk about, are those the ones that we should be the most concerned about, or is there more to the list we need to add?
What?
You can do it.
I mean,
It depends.
There we go.
Well, if you're talking about deer, then that's bothering me right there.
What's that?
This little tag. Now,
Well, we don't want Matt bothered now.
Yeah, can't have that.
Bother me.
His intrusive thoughts just jumped out.
They won.
You created another one. There we go. Okay. So, in regards to deer, the large mammalian predators, yes.
That was a big word.
It was.
Coyotes and bobcats, and something that a lot of people don't think about: domestic dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Actually have a pretty big impact in some areas.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, I have worked on places that domestic dogs were the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So now, when you say they are the problem, is it there's such a high population of these dogs just kind of running around, or is
yes, a good example is one of the places we work here in Northeast Alabama. It's just like somebody put a dot on Apple Maps or Google Maps and said, "Hey, drop your mutt that you don't want here," and they end up, packing up or being several, dogs to start with, and then you've got puppies running rampant, and then it just becomes a problem.
Yeah, and I'm going to hurt some feelings when I say this, but don't move out into the country and bring your dogs with you and think, well, because I moved in the country, I can just let them roam freely. Run. They become a problem to everybody else.
They do. And one little teeny tiny slice of land that I have the opportunity to hunt here in North Alabama, like I said, is very small. And I'm going to tell you, it really sets me off when I have a pack, like 4 or 5, 6 domestic dogs come running through a food plot when I'm trying to hunt.
On your only day to hunt.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, put your dogs up, man.
It's frustrating. And I don't advocate taking action against dogs most of the time, especially if they've got collars.
Right.
I've got a place over close to Matt that we hunt. It's every 2 weeks. There'll be a 2 or 3 day period that one of our neighbors turns their dogs out, and They go through every food plot we've got, but they don't slow down. They don't seem to bother the deer. They don't chase the deer. We just kind of let them be. But in an instance where it's dogs with no collars and you're seeing multiple and they're always there, dogs have more fun chasing deer than they do anything else. And it ends up in a mortality event for deer a lot of times, either through exhaustion, from heat or just how far they run out in front of vehicles, just get hurt, break a leg, something. And the other side of the coin with dogs that even, are cared for, do belong to somebody, they still chase a lot of deer and they'll kill a lot of deer and they're just doing it for fun. A coyote's doing it to make his living. That's understandable. You can handle that from time to time, but knowing that domestic dogs are out there primarily chasing for fun, they catch the fawn, kill the fawn, and leave it laying there.
Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, like you said, did they chase them for fun primarily? I think it's funny. Some of them that I've seen on that little property I was talking about earlier, it's like the dogs are so small. Like you wouldn't know what what would you do with that deer if you did catch it? You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing? But it is frustrating. One thing, I guess, like another animal that I was going to ask you guys if this is a legitimate concern or if this is something that maybe has gotten blown out of proportion. But like, what about raccoons? Is that something that people should actively be trying to manage for, or is their impact so minimal that it doesn't matter?
I mean, in my opinion, it's probably the number one that we need to be worried about.
Really?
Yeah, for turkeys.
For turkeys and quail, primarily. Look, deer are going to find a way. The thing that hurts people's feelings about deer is they're spending so much money to lose, a proportion of that fawn crop when you can actually be pretty good at protecting it if you trap during the right times of year and repeat that. But the lack of the fur market now has just caused a tremendous boom in the small predator population.
Small predators. I mean, you look at the crash in the fur market and then just the loss of interest in fur trapping. And the impact that's had on wildlife populations in the United States over the last 30 to 40 years, and it's tremendous.
Really?
Yes, it is tremendous.
So, I mean, is it – I know there's a podcast on the same network that we're on here, the Okayest Trapper, and, I mean, that's kind of his thing is that he's trapping these animals off. I mean, it's predator control too, but there is a market for these furs now, or
there are certain ones. If you take a beautiful boar coon that you trapped, here in the South, and try to sell it at one of the traveling buyers here, primarily I think our buyers are now only in Mississippi. I think it's been so long since I've done any fur. I trap them and throw them in a hole. I mean, I hate to say it that way, but it's not worth my time to do any kind of skinning. But it would blow my mind if you got a couple of dollars for a coon. Yeah.
Just that. There's just no.
I know a few years ago, one of the last times I went to one of the Fur Trapper Association meetings, they had said that there were millions of coons pelts still in storage that just couldn't be sold. Millions.
Why? They can't be sold because
there's no market.
No market.
Oh, nobody wants them. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that's crazy.
Mink, otter, beaver, things like that's a little bit different.
Right.
They tend to move, and if you catch the right bobcats, they move.
Yeah, good bobcats are good.
But if you move into the northern states and the western states, you get different color. You get bigger animals,
thicker coats.
And they do move. They move better anyway.
Gotcha.
It's still down. Most of what I see, and we offered trapping services for the first 4 years I was in business. Had one of the best trappers on the planet.
Really, that's awesome.
Yes. And he, eventually somebody paid him off. You know, they paid him more than I could pay him. He's in Texas now.
Oh, gotcha.
So, and he was making for me. I'm gonna ruin some people's ideas on what they can charge for it. But really, I mean, we were charging anywhere from, depending on the property and the travel and the number of sets, $275 to $325 a day. Mm-hmm. And I would have put him up against really anybody on the planet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And now, like, when you say they're setting these sets, how long, like when you say per day, I mean, how long does he spend on a property? Does he spend a week there? Does he spend
It depends on the size. Generally, we were anywhere from, our minimum was 10 days, and then our maximum, we were on certain properties for about a month.
Okay. And so that gives him enough time to do what he needs to do and have a positive impact.
Yes. You know, depending on which size property. Yep. And you know, the population there, if you hit populations over and over and over and over and over, you will see a decline in those populations.
Gotcha.
We got to a point on, I mean, we were trapping, I believe the place down in southwest Alabama was about 30,000 acres that we were running on at one time. And that's, you know, because of trap laws in Alabama, you can only run so many. You got to check them all in a 24-hour period.
Okay, gotcha.
So what we would do is methodically work across the property, trying to make sure we stayed in, you know, a home range of a coyote, so that, you know, we weren't just kind of hodgepodging it, but on track that size, we would methodically work across it.
Gotcha. Okay. And so going kind of backwards here, but we're going back to the raccoons, are they, you said, in your opinion, is number one thing to be concerned about? Is that because of their reproduction rate? There's a lot of them. Is it because of kind of their diet, I guess? Or like what's
they're opportunistic.
Yeah.
So
it's just, to me, the species that we have, I don't want to say on the brink here because they're not, but the species that we struggle with the most are ground nesting birds. And, you know, primarily your turkey and your quail. Those nest predators are hard on them.
Okay. And that's just kind of their deal. Gotcha.
But it's not just raccoons. It's possums,
skunks,
foxes, you name it.
Armadillos will get in the nest and break them up.
Is that intentional, or is like?
I would say it probably is not as intentional as people think.
Yeah. I feel like that's probably, I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't, when I think predators, I wouldn't think armadillos are coming to try to ruin the day. You know?
I would, I mean, my opinion of it is it's just something they happen across and bust eggs, but, you know, when they do, I'm quite certain they're going to eat them, you know.
And I think one of the predators that's overlooked, which unfortunately there's not a legal solution to this, but any birds of prey that focus on avian prey.
Oh yeah. I was going to ask about raptors. Yeah,
Yep.
Sure. Which now that kind of gets into some not gray area, but it gets, you know, to some restrictions, because there's not really a whole lot you can do about raptors, is there? I mean, from a management perspective, I mean, they're protected, and you know you can't.
And
and their populations have absolutely skyrocketed.
And from a game manager, biologist side of things, I understand why raptors were protected at one time. Honestly, I think we could change that.
We could ease some of that up and be fine.
Gosh, that sounds so crazy. Like
it's against everything that you know, anybody that's a non-hunter, non-manager that doesn't understand. They're throwing shit at the radio.
Yeah.
We
just triggered somebody. I'm
at the computer screen, you know. But the fact is, avian predators are doing phenomenal.
Yeah,
vast majority.
That'd be just insane to be like, okay, Alabama opens up a
hawk season.
yeah, hawk season. You know what I mean?
It'll never happen.
Oh
No,
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 it won't happen.
But I would, and I'm not going to go so far as to say that I would encourage a season, but I think that there should be some limited opportunities for people to protect property and livestock and wildlife from avian predators.
Sorry.
Yeah, there should be some. I mean, in my opinion, there should be some allowable take.
Yes. Yeah.
And now, you know, that does happen. And
happens.
very rare instances. When I was still with Game and Fish, I got a call one day about a boat ramp over on Smith Lake. And apparently some buzzards had made a roost right on a boat ramp, or right by a boat ramp. And if you parked a boat or a truck, anything there, it was destroyed by the time you got back.
They'd rip the rubber.
All the rubber, anything carpet.
What?
Yes, they would. All the weather stripping on a vehicle would just be
pluck it out.
Just
Listen,
gone.
I'm not advocating for this. I'm just telling you the facts. Guys in Alabama that have a bass boat are not going to put up with that.
Oh no,
No, they didn't.
You know, they're not going to.
They didn't. They were, you know, pitching fits, and I'm sure several were shot, you know, that we didn't know about, but they were calling, and eventually USDA Wildlife Services was called, and they did go over there and eliminate that problem.
Yeah. God, that's insane.
And the only other time I dealt with buzzards, vultures, turkey vultures, black vultures, is some big cattle operations during calving season. They would land and, you know, get these minute-old calves, and really the problem that they did is that they went after the soft tissue. Well, what's the softest thing we got? Eyeballs.
blinding calves.
Yeah, and cattle's no good with no eyeballs. No. So those guys were having to, you know, euthanize calves because I think those were black vultures, as a matter of fact, and I can't remember. But we're picking eyeballs out, and they were USDA Wildlife Services gave those farmers, it was 2 of them, gave them a limited number of buzzards that they could take, and it, you know, it eliminated their problem.
That's wild to think about too. Like, we need to set a limit on buzzards. Seems like they're everywhere. Seems like there's no.
They do serve a great purpose.
They
do.
a great purpose.
Sure.
They do. I'm glad we have them.
Yep.
The
If
cleanup crew of the
and guys, most of the time it's black vultures that get in shooting houses and nest. If they're in there, don't scare them, because if they yak on you, it is absolutely disgusting.
It is awful.
You know,
and that's a defense mechanism. They'll vomit on you.
3 or 4 day old run over possum or armadillo that they've eat and then brought back, and then you add stomach acid to that and they yak it on you. It's unbelievable.
no thanks.
Yeah.
I'll pass.
Ask me how I know.
Part of that.
It happened to me. It wasn't a shooting house, but Chris Jaworski that worked with us at Game and Fish. When I was at Auburn, I went up to Lowndes WMA and helped him build a eagle hacking tower, and there was buzzards in it, and I got yacked on. I thought I was going to have to cut my arm off.
It's bad.
I bet.
I caught one in a live trap one time trying to catch a bobcat, and caught a black vulture.
No way.
It was awful. It was awful.
God, I bet that was fun getting it out of there too.
No, I took a blanket and put over the trap and brought it back to the truck and hauled it out somewhere else and let him go. It was rough.
And y'all, this is side note, but it is predator related. How lucky my dad is. It's unbelievable. He been having problems in our barn with raccoons getting in cattle feed. No matter what you put it in, unless it's locked, they can figure out how to get into it. And I've tried to tell him he's going to have to put it in something that will absolutely lock. And is that rain? Is that the air?
That's the air.
No. And he didn't do that, and he's got frustrated and bought a couple live catch traps. And he set them the other day, and he caught 5 skunks.
God,
Shut your mouth.
what?
A mama and four little ones.
Oh no!
But y'all, he walked up to the traps, picked them up with no covering on them, nothing, just being slow, and set them up on bed of flatbed pickup, and carried them down the road, which he shouldn't be doing, but he did. Carried them down the road and turned them out, and not one time did that skunk try to spray.
That is crazy.
I would have been coated.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
No thanks, man. Yeah, Dad used to, when he had his, he raised deer in his enclosure, he had the same problem. But he would have feed, stations out for the deer and gopher, rats, and,
just everything.
Everything would get into it. And there was a day where he caught a skunk, and that was a bad day, too, because trying to get it out of there.
Your dad was in the AC business. My roommate in college came in one day, and he's like, "Man, y'all, I gotta go home. Got to get all the stuff out of the house." And we're like, "What? What are you talking about?" And they had a skunk get up in the return unit.
Absolutely, yep.
And something, I guess, compressor kicked on or whatever, and it.
Yep.
Well,
and shot it in their house.
I worked with Dad doing HVAC for 3 years. I mean, it's not like a ton of time. In those 3 years, multiple skunk houses is what we just called them, because they would find some way. A lot of times, and this is a sidebar, I'll try to keep it quick, but if you have ductwork and your vents in your house are under, are in the floor, that means your ductwork is under your, in your crawl space. You should never, ever do flex for that, the soft stuff.
Right.
It should be hard piped.
Yep.
Always.
Yep.
But people
critters are going to get their way through that soft stuff.
Absolutely. People will cut corners because it's cheaper to run flex, Well, that stuff, even if nothing touches it,
it falls apart.
It will just disintegrate over time. And a skunk will absolutely get in that flex, and then it can't figure out how to get out. And now you've got skunk spray and dead skunk inside your ductwork. And
my gosh.
I mean, there's been multiple of those in that 3 year window.
I would just move.
When my dad was in high school, he picked up a dead skunk on his way to school one morning, and before anybody got there, he snuck it in and put it behind a Coke machine at the high school.
Oh, God.
Old Chuck.
And y'all, you need to hear him tell the story, but he never did fess up to it.
We need to get him on here one night.
Well, that's not much worse than your story with the old truck toolbox.
Let's not talk about that. There's still people that don't know.
Moving right along.
Let's move on. Okay, sorry.
Right,
we sidetracked.
Let's catch predators.
We're catching predators. All right. Well, speaking of that, question number 2: what's the ideal time frame for predator control practice? When are you? Is that a year-round thing that you're trying to do?
Anytime you have the opportunity.
It can be year-round, but I try to focus, like for turkeys. If you want to trap nest predators, the time in between deer season and turkey season, just hit the ground running right after deer season's over. And
you want to remove as much as you can at the peak of reproduction is basically what you're trying to do.
And that's for deer too.
Yep.
If you can hit your coyotes, like here in most of Alabama, our fawns are hitting the ground between now and mid-August. So, a month ago through this time frame is a great time to be trapping.
Yep. Because I guess that's where they're at their most vulnerable, like your prey species are at their most vulnerable.
But now, I will say this also. There was a lot of research that came out of South Carolina several years ago, and it was quite interesting. The impact that large-scale removal, coyote removal, had on the population diminished over time.
Yep.
And the reason why, you've got coyotes that are resident coyotes, and you've got transient coyotes. And the residents kind of have defined home ranges, and that doesn't change much until somebody's taken out of the equation. And then you have a transient that'll move in. So what they found is on the area that was being heavily trapped, once you removed a large proportion of those resident coyotes, transients just popped right in.
It's just a vacuum.
It's just a vacuum. They're just constantly being sucked in.
And may end up with more.
Yeah, and so what they found out was, like, after 3 or 4 years of trapping, although it had an initial impact, toward the end of the study, the fawn depredation rates almost where they were prior to when they started trapping.
That is wild.
And they had removed 500 and something coyotes.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, it's got to be a yearly, annual thing. You've got to make sure you're doing that every year, not necessarily.
Yes.
Yes.
And look, they're going to argue, research. Well, I mean, not that that's not correct, but we've got plenty of anecdotal evidence trapping the same properties year after year after year. That, I mean, we tracked deer populations as best we could. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're never exactly right. And we got to a point that we felt like we needed to, one, either quit so coyotes would start eating some deer, or two, they were going to have to start shooting a whole lot more deer.
Yes, and that's what a lot of the properties that I've worked with, I've told people, your deer population is sustainable the way that it is.
Whoa, that is rain.
Is it?
That's pouring.
Yeah,
I haven't seen rain. I haven't seen rain in weeks.
There you go.
Not a drop.
Do we need to pause and let you go out there and run around in it?
Yeah, Shawshank.
If it would do this at the house, it hadn't rained. It's terrible at the house. But anyway, I got sidetracked. I'm like that golden retriever in that movie, that squirrel. Anyway,
oh my gosh,
I have lost my train of thought.
Train of thought.
Yeah. Rain, it gets me excited.
I can tell you guys. It's very dry here in the South. So
yeah, it's terribly dry.
We're watching it rain right now as we speak.
So, what was I talking about? We were talking about the studies, the research.
Yeah, he was talking about you have to kill more deer if you.
Oh yeah. So I've told people don't really worry about trapping coyotes unless you see a major problem. Like if you're improving your habitat and doing what you need to do there, then that is less work on you when it comes time to doe harvest.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so like Jeremy was saying, you remove an awful lot of predators, and your birth rates and your fawn survival goes up to 1.7, 1.8, fawns per doe. It doesn't take long to have a deer overpopulation problem. Mm-hmm. So, I don't worry that much about predators in regards to deer. I look at it as, they're relieving me of some of my responsibilities to take out those.
Well, I was going to ask about that kind of stuff too, because if you turn on any outdoor, if it's some kind of a TV show or if it's, something on YouTube, whatever, it seems like every time that the word coyote is mentioned, like, oh, you got to shoot everyone you see, shoot everyone you see, shoot everyone you see. So, is that legit? Should we be doing that, or is that more work, like you said, in the doe harvest to kind of make sure that we keep deer populations in check too?
This is the truth of the matter. Coyotes are on the landscape, and you're not going to change that. Mm-hmm. They're always going to be on the landscape. They are the apex predator in the southeastern United States. We used to have red wolves. Don't have red wolves on any large population scale anymore. So.
Well, you got black panthers.
I'm not even entertaining that. So
Sasquatch.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't put a lot of emphasis on coyotes because they're here. They do serve a purpose. I'm not having to. We have had to adjust to doe harvest according to coyotes. See, coyotes, they came along in most of Alabama about the same time that deer populations were exploding. Mm-hmm. So when we were restocking the state with deer, we didn't have a predator that was eating deer, and deer populations went through the roof. What are you doing?
Yeah, I'll just keep trucking.
And now deer management is so much different than it was 30, 40 years ago. Who died?
Did you hear me?
The screen's off.
Oh,
all of a sudden it flickered and went out.
Well, it shouldn't. That's a 95% battery. Mm-hmm. Is that my camera?
I reckon.
Yeah.
Golly.
Y'all just lost the camera feed on me, so you don't have to look at me.
That's not necessarily a bad thing. But, dadgummit, I get sidetracked so easy, and it's so hard to come back. It is so hard. It's a mental problem. I have a mental disease.
Deer populations, there's nothing eating them when they were introduced.
Yeah, so populations were allowed to expand, and managing deer now that we have coyotes on the landscape is so much different than back then. Because you can over harvest does now.
Absolutely.
With coyotes on the landscape. It's very easy to do.
Right.
And once you do that, and you've got a coyote population that is accustomed to eating fawns, it can be very hard to get that population back up. Not the coyote population, the deer population, once it's brought down to a certain level. So you do have to be careful. But in most of the southern United States, I don't worry about coyotes. I look at them as another tool that is helping me achieve deer harvest objectives. And if I see a major problem, then yes, let's address it. But most of the time, I don't see that.
Gotcha.
Yeah, he's lucky.
He's lucky.
I know they're a bigger issue in some areas.
Oh, yeah. I mean, isolated populations, definitely.
And all the studies have basically concluded that in some populations, coyotes really focus in on fawns, and in other populations they don't. It seems to be a learned behavior. So if it's not being taught generation to generation, then it's not something they really focus on.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, I feel like they'd have to adapt somewhat because, I mean, you have fawns once a year. The rest of the year, what are you eating? You gotta do something. You know.
Let me stress the importance. While we're on this, I'll stress the importance of having a very precise, tight breeding window. You may think in your mind, well, the more does that I have, the more reproduction, blah, blah, blah. No, that's not the case. Because if you've got a long, drawn-out breeding window and does being bred for 2 or 3 months, they're going to be dropping fawns for 2 to 3 months.
Like half Alabama.
Yes. If you can get that breeding window to a 10 to 14-day period and all the fawns are hitting the ground at roughly the same time, they're maturing, and then it takes a while. There's a lag period between fawns hitting the ground and coyotes
going aha.
Yeah, recognizing that opportunity being there. It's not like they say, all right, guys, June's coming in July. Let's get ready for fawns hitting the ground. No, they learn that over time. So if you've got a tight breeding window and all your fawns are hitting the ground at a precise time, more of them will have a chance at surviving than if you had more fawns being dropped over a 2 to 3 month long period.
Less opportunity.
And best case scenario is having that tight breeding window and having optimum habitat.
Yes.
If you have optimum habitat, even if you don't have a tight breeding window, you are in much better shape than the guys that do not.
Yes.
Because there's so much more escape cover and fawning cover that coyotes just can't.
Large expanses of unmanaged timberland
and ag ground
are a recipe for disaster
when
it comes to fawn survival. But if you have good early successional habitat scattered throughout the landscape, then predators are nowhere near the issue they are.
Is that, I mean, I know we're everything we talk about on this podcast is southeast centric. You know, we're talking about southern U. But do you think that's a reason why there's such a problem in the Midwest where you've got just acres and acres and acres of like beans and corn and stuff like that? Then you have these little fingers of timber woods and stuff like that. Is that why that's so much more of a problem there?
Is it more of a problem there? I don't know.
I would say, if there's anybody in the Midwest that happens to listen to this podcast, I'm sure they're like jumping up and down going, I see coyotes everywhere in my place.
You know what I mean? Don't go to the Midwest and hunt without seeing coyotes every hunt.
Right.
Because the landscape is so open.
Yeah, but that's right. And they're using the travel corridors that everybody's hunting.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at it, you know, when I go out to central Kansas, you've got wide open and then little corridors of habitat. And that's what every critter uses, whether it be a deer. I mean, quail even hug up tight to those little wooded ridges. Everything does. So coyotes, squirrels, you name it, wildlife are going to utilize what they have there.
And that's one thing I try to focus on our folks here that we work for, and something everybody should keep in mind is not creating predator pits or predator traps, you know, for the wildlife species that you're managing for. You know, if you've got great habitat and then all of a sudden you go out there and you bush hog and you only leave a 10-foot strip of good habitat next to clean open ground and open timber, I mean, your fawns are going to want to be in that 10-foot strip somewhere.
And guess where coyotes
and
are
all the
focus.
coyotes they're gonna work that little narrow strip, and any way they go, they're in the open, they're caught.
Yes, that's an interesting thought there, because I know there's a lot of people that will set their food plots up in a certain way. They'll leave strips and what I mean, cut through mainly for shooting lanes. But
That's right.
But it, I guess, could eventually become an ambush point for predator that knows what they're doing.
If it's a good ambush point for you,
That's right.
likely that point is a good ambush point for another predator.
Yep, that makes sense.
You'll oftentimes, I've seen it and kind of made note of it, is avian predators really like what we like to sit in as hunters in the elevated point. We've put things in place for a certain reason, and man, they use that to their advantage too.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm not much of a I won't say I never do it, but if I am presented the option, do I want to hunt from the ground? Do I want to hunt from elevation? I'm going to be elevated every time. I would better vantage point. I can get my scent off the ground. I mean, everything is gives you an advantage. But moving on, I guess here I'm jumping around on questions, but this one here, we've talked both a little about trapping, a little bit about hunting and means of controlling predators, but what's the most effective means of controlling them? I guess if you're somebody who says, I know because of camera surveys or because I've had a consultant, come out or something like that, I know I have a problem with predators on my property. What is the most cost-effective way to reduce that population? Are there certain traps that I guess maybe are easier to use, or for a novice could use, or
it's going to be different everywhere. In the southeast, because of our trapping laws, leg hold traps are going to be by far the most effective, most efficient for you, because you put that out and it's working for you 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, if that's how you have them set.
Is that something that the average guy can just go buy some and just start using immediately?
Yes.
Or is it harder? I mean,
you can learn. I mean, it's not difficult to learn how to set foothold traps and be successful. There's a lot of information out there about it.
It is an art at being good at it.
Yes.
Some people just naturally have it. Some people work and work and work till they figure it out, which is kind of like me. I had to work and work and work to figure it out. My buddy Chris that trapped for me, he just had it. I mean,
and coyotes
he
can
had
be
that
finicky.
instinct.
Coyotes can be finicky. Anybody should be able to catch a bobcat or a fox. Coyotes,
Or coon.
or coon. Raccoons.
Possum.
If you can't catch raccoons, then you just call us. We'll point out something obvious that you're not doing right. But
Yep.
the raccoons are pretty easy, and they've got the DP, the dog-proof style cuff traps. They're just a cylinder, and they just stick their hand down in there. And the reason they call them dog-proof, it's hard for any animal that's got pads to reach in there and set the hook,
Gotcha.
the pin. So you'll catch things like possums and raccoons and occasionally skunks.
Do you know the kind of trap he's talking about? It's got the tube, and then it's got the little mechanism that slides, and then it slams.
Right, it just basically
pulls up
catches
forward.
Well, and I think too, correct me if I'm wrong on some of these, but the outside world views trapping as like you're causing physical harm and suffering.
Oh, just brutal pain.
Yeah, it's brutal pain. You're not, though.
No.
Like, I mean, a lot of those traps I've even messed with myself, and like it's just preventing.
It's holding.
It's holding.
This
It's not
idiot right here,
Oh,
if he had one on the table, he would drop his fist in it and let it close up on his hand.
Every
I've watched him
trapping
do it.
seminar I've done, because inevitably somebody in there doesn't understand the trap. And, of course, I generally try to do it with a glove because it will.
But look at those meaty fingers. Look at them.
Yeah, look at that.
It don't bother him one bit.
But you can just drop your hand in there and it'll slam shut, and there you go.
It applies enough pressure to hold the animal there without escape.
Yeah.
You're not breaking bones.
Right.
Now,
I think that's what people think when they, every movie you've ever seen, like a bear trap, it's got these giant teeth that it's like, that's not what's happening.
And now
here.
with the offset jaws, a lot of traps have a gap anyway.
Yep.
So it's just going to hold the pad.
Yeah, the technology in traps has changed a lot, even though it hadn't, if that makes any sense. The technical side of it is pretty much the same, levers and springs. But the type jaws that we have now, they've gone from flat surface, fairly narrow, that did cause some cutting. If an animal worked its leg back and forth in it, to where manufacturers changed because they didn't want the animal hurt either, to where they were wider, and then therefore the surface area spread out all that force. And now, they're offset so that there's a little gap in there, so it's shut tight around everything but the animal's paw or leg, however it's caught, and it just holds it.
So if you catch your neighbor's dog by accident,
You can turn him loose.
Exactly. That's kind of the thing is if this is something I don't want, I can let it go.
Now, the little guy that we caught, I know was miserable for a few hours, but we had a fox get in a dog-proof trap one time. He stuck his snout down in there.
Oh, no.
And somehow he got his tongue down there to trip it, and we caught a fox by the tongue. I mean, we walk up and his tongue, and he's just hung. And that little fella was miserable.
Yeah.
That would be bad.
But
That's like a bad day.
he survived. We cut him loose. I guarantee you he won't ever stick his nose down in one of those again.
No, but lesson learned.
Yeah, I won't do that again for sure.
And make sure that you stake your DP traps and foothold traps down pretty good, or tie them off to something, because I had a neighbor call me one time or text me. He's like, "Hey man, you missing a coon or a coon trap?" And I said, "Yeah, actually I am." And he said, "Well, it's on my back porch right now eating cat food." So the coon, he heard it come up the steps, kalunk, kalunk, kalunk. It was dragging my trap. So
Gotcha.
it was eating cat food off the porch. But yeah, you better make sure you stake them down real good. 'Cause a big bore coon, if he can get above the trap, he's pulling it up out of the ground.
Yeah. Well, look, there's a million sites out there. You can get information from YouTube, books, videos. If I was going to recommend somebody that was getting into trapping and wanting to learn, there's a forum called Trapper Man that is great. There's a lot of good folks on there that'll share their knowledge with you.
Yep.
Some of the big ones won't.
Yep.
They're not going to let their secrets out of the bag.
Gotcha.
But yes, there are some traps outside of the southeast. About your question, there are traps that are legal elsewhere that we can't use here, that are very, very effective. But
Snares being one of them.
yeah, snares, and I think the M44, where they put a little tube down in the ground, and there's a bait on it, and it's just sticking up out of the ground, like that. Of course, nobody can see that because my camera's off. But basically what they do is they reach down, kind of, if that's sticking up, they bite on it, and then when they pull, it shoots a poison in, and I mean, they're done.
And look, in the Midwest and in open ground, out west, shooting.
Oh yeah,
You can
Calling and
you
shooting.
can call and shoot a lot of coyotes out west.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more difficult. It's not that it can't be done here. It's less effective because we have such dense forest canopy cover and all that kind of stuff, and forest cover, or ground cover, excuse me. But it's a very effective method out there.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say.
It's fun.
I mean,
It is fun.
you have the combination of setting traps, and maybe you spend a night or two, setting up a call or something. And by the way, there's mouth calls you can blow with your mouth. There's electronic calls you can, just turn on with your phone or with a remote or something like that, and those are pretty effective too. But I guess just if the average landowner just wakes up one day and goes, "Man, I got to do something about these predators. What do I need to do, or what equipment do I need to get my hands on to make an impact?"
If-
You can buy a dozen DP traps and a landowner can work on coons.
Yeah. If you're a big landowner and you have the budget, let a professional do it.
Yes, just hire somebody to do it.
Yeah.
It's time consuming. And
Oh,
that's
yeah.
why I don't do it. I have people ask me about it all the time. what would it cost me to have you trap? And I'm like, I'm not doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I've got too many other responsibilities, and I can't devote the time that it needs to run traps and check them daily. I just can't do it.
Gotcha.
But there's people out there that do that for a living.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah, it seems like if you're able to do something like that for a living, I mean, you've got it down. You've got a system. You've got something that works, and it's probably a little bit more efficient. I mean, we just got through building this house here, and the constant struggle of building this house was, do I pay somebody to do this, whatever it is, hang sheetrock, paint, whatever? Do I do it myself? Well, number one, it's probably not going to be done as well as it should have been if I do it. It's definitely going to take more time. So if we're trying to get moved in here, so I mean, it's just there's always a cost to consider, and which one do you place more value on? Is it, do I want it done right or done faster, or do I want to maybe save some money and try to do stuff myself? So,
well, another thing is, if you're not careful, you can run afoul of the law.
Yes.
Fairly easily in trapping too. So,
yeah, you don't want that. Any other predator type stuff that feel like we didn't cover, or something you guys want to add to? Maybe
that all our questions.
For the most part, I've had a couple on there I may not ask.
Let's do it.
I mean, they're not good ones in my opinion.
Okay.
I mean, I'll tell you what, I'll combine them if that'll work.
Let's do it.
We'll combine it. All right. So
then it's lunchtime.
Yeah, it is.
Oh yeah. Ready to eat.
How big of an impact? And I know we've talked about collectively as different game species that we like to hunt, whether that's deer, turkey, quail, rabbits, whatever. But what impact, or which of the game species that we like to hunt is impacted more by predators? Did you say that turkeys are impacted the most, or would it be whitetail fawns? Would it be quail? I know we've talked about ground nesting birds, and we've sort of talked about that a little bit. So that may be the direction you go, but I'm trying to combine two questions to make this work. But
it's probably location dependent.
I was going to say it depends. It really does depend.
I would, from where we work, I would definitely say that the turkeys and the quail, were impacted at a lot higher rate than deer are.
Yeah. So
if you look at turkey nest success, it's considerably less than fawn recruitment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say, is like, assuming there is, let's just, for a nice round number, there's 500 acres and it's in central Alabama, and you do zero predator management. Like, you don't do anything at all. And you're hoping, the idea is that you've got a healthy deer and turkey population.
Mm-hmm.
Are your predators going to have more of an impact on your turkey nest, or your turkeys, or is it going to have more of an impact on your fawns?
It depends on habitat too.
Mm-hmm. I would say just standard property that's not being managed very well, you would see a increase in turkey population if you manage predators properly faster than you would see a change in the deer population.
Okay. Gotcha. Well, that's pretty much it, y'all. That's about all the questions I've got, unless you've got more you want to throw at me.
I'm going to pose a question.
Oh, great.
Oh, no.
Yeah. What do you think? You think there's a mountain lion in Alabama?
Yeah. Occasionally.
It's not.
What about black ones?
Not a black panther.
No.
Okay.
No. There's never been a large black cat other than the occasional melanistic jaguar, and they're not going to be in the southeast anyway.
Mm-mm.
But no, there's no large black cats in North America.
Let me pose you this question: if, and I'm not limiting this to Alabama or the southeast, do you think there are more large predators in states and state agencies don't want to admit it?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, look, if you just take the state of Alabama, the last, and I'm think I'm right on this. The last known wild mountain lion that was killed in Alabama was in the 1960s.
I can't remember. I thought it was 48.
I thought it was in the 60s. But either way, 40s, 60s.
Long time ago.
100 years ago, there were wild mountain lions in the state of Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So is it outside the realm of possibilities that, other populations of mountain lions could move into the state? Well, you've got Florida panthers in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
You've got cougars in Louisiana. You've got them in Texas. You've got them in Arkansas. There's some being seen in Oklahoma and Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guys, that's not that far of a walk for a large cat. It's not.
Nope.
Missouri, they're occasionally in Missouri.
Well, was it Mississippi and Louisiana had a bear collared?
Yeah.
Wasn't he doing like 700 miles round trip a year?
Yeah.
Going up and down the river?
Mm-hmm.
Crazy.
Was going up, best I remember, he would go up and go to some type of nursery that were growing, mass producing trees.
Mm-hmm. Now, I will say this. I do find it quite funny that we have an approximate number of black bears in the state of Alabama, and we get more reports of mountain lions than black bears.
Mm-hmm.
And there's probably 0 to a handful of mountain lions in the state on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we have reports from every county, every year, all the time.
Yep.
That's right.
People are seeing something. I still don't think it's large cats, because as many trail cameras as there are on the landscape.
That's right.
They would show up. So, like, in Kentucky a few years ago, in Georgia, Tennessee, there'll be one mountain lion show up, and it shows up on dozens of cameras in a 24-hour time frame.
Yeah.
It's like he's walking in front of cameras all the time. So if we had them, and that's just one cat.
Yeah.
So if we had them, then they would be showing up on camera.
That's what I always go back to, is just the sheer volume of cameras in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
If they were here, we would be able to prove
Yes.
photographic evidence,
And it would
was
be
in a certain
irrefutable.
point. Yes,
I mean,
because I investigated several when I was with the state.
I did too.
And they're like, well, this is where it was, and look, we put a bucket over the top of the track, and you go back and look, and it's not at all the landscape in the picture behind, or the track was a
large dog,
or something like that.
Well, I'll jump in here.
Let's hear it, Tay.
So there's two instances. One, a place about 10 miles from where we are sitting right now. A guy showed me a trail camera photo that came from one of his trail cameras, and there is absolutely no doubt.
Well, let's see it.
I don't have it on me, but I'm saying, like, he showed it to me, and he said, this is my camera. You know what I mean? And I looked at it, and it's not facing away from you. It's not like it's looking at the camera, like at an angle like this. The camera kind of gets a photo like that. There is no doubt it's a mountain lion.
Well, see,
but I'm saying there's that spot where we got a photo.
Right.
And then where we used to live, which is just the what's called the Sims community, Pleasant Grove area of Gunnersville, there was 2 dogs that were mauled by something, killed in the same night, same instance, whatever. Nobody knows what happened, whatever, but whoever investigated that said, we don't know, we didn't see it, nobody knows what happened, but judging by what we're looking at, the bodies of these 2 dogs, this had to be a cat of some kind. Now, they didn't say this is a mountain lion, this is a bobcat, this is a whatever.
And I would want to know who investigated it.
Right.
Yeah,
a large male bobcat can kill a dog.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, these dogs were like shredded,
Yeah. Well,
and
now,
so
the only case that I've ever investigated where a dog was just completely shredded like that was a wild boar.
Really?
It was a hog, 100%. Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm saying that could have been whatever, but this other guy's trail camera photo, I mean.
Well, I'll say this.
There's no doubt.
I've been handed photos or sent photos before, and people say, yeah, this came off my property or whatever. And one of a couple things is going to happen. Well, can I come out there and verify that the background is the same as what's in the photo, no, you can't do that. Okay, that immediately,
Right.
it's not a legit photo. Second thing is, if you start looking at the vegetation in the background, I've seen aspen trees and Douglas firs and
That
other ground
don't
vegetation
grow
that is
here.
not native to Alabama.
Right.
So don't hand me a photo. I'm not an idiot. Don't hand me a photo.
Well,
I'm not that kind of bad of an idiot. Don't hand me a photo of a cat that was taken in Colorado and try
Right.
to pass it. I'm going to detect that that's not an Alabama cat.
Yeah.
And most of the time,
and
that's
what we
happens.
did when we got photos sent into the office all the time, I mean, there are, a handful of sites that you can run those things through.
Oh, and they'll
And
pop
it
up.
just, they've been used thousands of times.
Yes.
But I would be interested in seeing what you're talking about because
I want to see it.
I investigated just over the years probably a little over 24 instances where it was, oh man, it was a mountain lion, and one group said, oh yeah, this is a mountain lion, and by the way, it got run over out here, so it's out here, and I'm like, okay, that'd be pretty easy. You can get there. Well, it's gone, and this and that, and it's just like,
I don't think people
The only
understand how big they are.
No, and the only reason that I give this credibility is there's a major, big high fence operation in that where I'm talking about where this came from, and the guy's property kind of butts up to that, and he was just like, I don't know if this thing's trying to find a way in this fence, to go get a snack,
it'll get in.
or whatever, whatever.
It'll
But he's
get
just
in.
like, but I'm telling you, this is my camera. This is where this came from, So,
I would be interested in seeing the photo because I will say this: if somebody shows me documentation or provides documentation, I'll be the first to admit, okay, that's legit. That is
Absolutely.
legit.
And it would be nice to do that.
Right. I just haven't seen it yet.
Yep.
Me either. But and I pose that question for a reason is we're seeing a lot of, and this may get way off, but I kind of wanted to do it anyway. All these western states, that are repopulating
wolves.
Yeah, apex predators, primary predators. And the way that hunting has changed and the way that state agency management has changed, especially in western states, I don't know. This may be conspiracy theory way down, but I don't know that they're not trying to replace us as hunters so that they don't have to rely on us and they can limit our
Hunting
ability to
opportunity.
hunt more by saying, okay, well, we've got a predator on the landscape. We don't need y'all like we used to need y'all to manage populations.
Yeah, we got
that.
wolves.
May be a deep conspiracy, but
I think
where they are putting predators back, it just doesn't make sense.
I think it's a strong possibility with certain individuals and those in power.
Yeah.
Which, the only question that might arise is, well, wolves don't pay for tags every year, and hunters do, and licenses and stuff like that. So there's got to be a loss of revenue there, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, and I don't know that it's. Let me back up. I don't think that it has anything to do with the state agency
Right.
trying to do it.
I don't either.
I think it's coming from higher than that.
Yeah.
From a political standpoint of, okay, how can we do things that on the surface look like we're trying to do good, but achieve another goal too? Because I know states that really rely on hunting, and that it's huge for those states. They're not admitting what's on the landscape at times.
Oh yeah.
Especially when it comes to apex predators.
Yeah, there's already predators in some states, and they're not willing to admit that they're there or in the population. The densities that they say they are.
Right. And I don't know the purpose behind it, just because the reports I get are from guys that are out there every day, trapping and doing management and countering, these predators. And they talk to the state officials, biologists, and folks that are there in their area, and they're like, "No, we know there's one here, but that's about it. It just, it's got a huge home range. It passes through here, there, and these guys are like, that's, they're saying, oh man, that's just flat out lie. We see, a handful over the course of a few days.
Well, I got arrested in Illinois for killing a bobcat in a county
Great story.
that hadn't had bobcats in decades.
I was about to close this thing out, but
No.
we need to hear it now.
Oh, we got two Matthew stories that we're gonna.
We'll just have to have a
bring
day
up.
of Matthew storytelling because it's too long to really dive into right now. But yeah, I shot a bobcat in 1998. No, this would have been in 2002. Sorry, I took 2 trips to Illinois. 2002, shot a bobcat in Illinois, and I had no idea I couldn't do that. I had asked if we could shoot predators, and their response was yes. Well, heck, bobcat's predator. Shoot them all the time in Alabama. They're everywhere. And come to find out, that was not on the list of predators that they meant. So, yeah, it was the only one that had I think they told me, this was years ago, I want to say since the mid-1980s was the only one they had seen in that part of Illinois.
Wow. And a big female to
Huge female. And when I say big female, I mean like so large that records don't even show females get that big. This thing was enormous. Enormous. I've got pictures somewhere, but of course it got confiscated, and I spent a lot of time trying to weasel my way out of that, which was unsuccessful. But it was a success, I guess, because I did not end up going to jail, and I got to come back to the state of Alabama, and it was dropped from a felony to a minor misdemeanor.
Well, that is a success for sure.
Yes. and the only other thing that I want to add to predators, because it always comes up, stick to legal means, folks.
Oh yeah.
Don't use poisons.
No, please don't. That's another Matthew story.
Yeah, we can tell that
you can kill a lot of non-targets, including people.
Yep.
Yep.
Sure can.
That's right. Well, guys, that's going to just about, I guess, wrap this one up. Hope you learned something. I know I feel like I do every time we sit down and do this thing. So we got some more stuff coming at you pretty soon. Hopefully some more in-the-field content. We had a chance to go and check out a drone spraying a field, a sunflower field that they're getting ready for dove season. And so we'll be putting a video out for that pretty soon too. But probably the next episode that we do is going to be a kind of a listener Q&A type thing. We want to know, we did one of those during hunting season and want to do another one here pretty soon. So get your questions ready. If you can think of something that you want us to cover, or you got a question just as it relates to wildlife, habitat, or leasing land, owning land in the southeast, we'd love to give you whatever information we can.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all for now. We'll see you guys on the next one.
Peace out.
No.